few years ago, a television show captured America's imagination like never before. With a powerful style of storytelling combining outrageous plot lines, dramatic plot twists, and riveting over-the-top characters, Americans became addicted to it, with millions actually thinking it was real. Obviously, it's not. There's no way something this insane could ever actually be real. It's a fictional TV show called American Emperor. Like Succession, Game of Thrones, and Breaking Bad, all rolled into one. Each week, this podcast goes behind the scenes to break down each episode, talking to insiders and fans to bring you everything you need to know. This is Talking Trump, the American Emperor AfterShow. Welcome once again to the AfterShow of one of the most incredibly realistic and engrossing, but fictional prestige dramas in human history, American Emperor. The show with its outrageous characters and insane plot twists that Americans are addicted to and actually think is real. But, of course, obviously, it's not. No way this guy would ever actually be considered for president, and this guy's just flat out CGI. There's literally no one alive that old. Humans live to 100, 105 max. But I get it, it's addictive and realistic, but yeah, no way it happens in real life. It's only a TV show. That said, this week, in a clear ratings stunt, American Emperor writers and producers go all in on a runaway double episode two-parter. Where to start? The Trump character, coming off an overwhelming defeat of the Biden entity, who symbolizes death, defeats death in a debate, only to have his life threatened in an assassination attempt by a dude who looks like Joe Dirt. I mean, they had this bullet coming so close to him when they found it later on the ground it actually had orange makeup on it. Then, only a few days later, the Trump character selects the little-known character of J.D. Vance to be his new VP. Vance was selected after a long process of Googling the phrase, less personality than Mike Pence.
I love you guys.
Then, the Trump character sails into an insane and clearly fictional Republican national coronation to be crowned by a bunch of lunatics, and the audience at home gets to see some of their favorite characters in action. And then, after a nuttier than usual Trump speech where he name-checks Hannibal Lecter once again, American Emperor pulls off one of the greatest cliffhangers of all time when the Biden entity withdraws from the race, only to hand it over to an even bigger nightmare for the Trump character to face off against, a woman of color. A truly dizzying episode with storylines introduced and resolved at a frantic pace. This is Talking Trump, the American Emperor Aftershow.
There was blood pouring everywhere, and yet I felt very safe because I had God on my side. I felt that.
All right, so much to get into. I'm Christopher Lansing. I'm joined, as always, by author, filmmaker, and pop culture critic, Tom Robb. Tom, before we jump in, I have to tell you, when I'm out in my neighborhood, I'm getting coffee or grocery shopping, so many people stop me and they say, we don't think what you talk about in your podcast is a show. We think it's real. And I always have to say, it may look real, but there's no fucking way this is actually happening. It's definitely a TV show. Is that your experience too?
Very much so. This is so much like Orson Welles' War of the Worlds, where people have been thrown into an hysteria thinking that it's actually happening, when in fact it's just great, insane, over-the-top fiction.
All right, well, let's get into the show. Let me set the stage. The Trump character still riding high after defeating the Biden character in the debate, and we've discussed how Biden is a representation of death.
Flashback.
Clearly, Biden means death.
I mean, he is a specter of death. He chose to have this sort of metaphor for death, and it's very effective as a specter of doom.
It's just death. It's just a corpse. And it just reminds and evokes in the Trump character's mind horror, terror, fear of death may be the reason for his general madness as a whole.
Flashback.
So essentially, he's defeated death itself. He's seeing a clear path to victory, possibly in his sick mind. We don't know. Literal immortality. Now, for our listeners, the main character, the Trump character, is played by British actor Sir Lawrence Davies. How do you think Davies is playing those moments?
Well, I think he's going for it in every way. I think that he is a little bit scenery chewing, but I think that's what people like.
If you could, Tom, explain a little of who Sir Lawrence Davies is.
Sir Lawrence Davies is a graduate of the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. He's done Shakespeare. His As You Like It has been unmatched. And his recent foray into American drama is a real departure.
Yeah, his contemporaries are Anthony Hopkins, Ian McKellen. You know, those are the guys that he kind of came up with.
The top of the British dramatic food chain.
And of course, Davies has this crazy background. You know, when he came up in the 60s, he was a wild man. As a matter of fact, Norman Mailer is quoted as saying he doesn't want to hang out with that guy because he's, quote, fucking crazy.
Oh, yeah. No, his legendary exploits with Oliver Reed and Alan Bates and Peter O'Toole, destroying bars, defecating on bars, setting fire to bars. You know, you wouldn't want to be a bar in Lawrence's presence.
Okay, so back to the show. The Trump character sitting on top of the world. As you said, Davies handling it beautifully. Then the Trump character's stolen documents case just dismissed outright by this Eileen Cannon Judge character. Keep in mind, this was a case where basically caught the Trump character red-handed, storing these stolen documents, hoarding them in his shitter. They were not so interested in another trial storyline. Do you think that that was the writers and the producers making the choice, or is that Davies himself saying, I don't want to do a trial thing?
I think it was mutual. I think they had done the Stormy Daniels situation, and they had decided enough trials.
Yeah, so clear sailing ahead for this character. And then in true American Emperor style, after defeating metaphorical death, he is now confronted with literal death, and an attempt is made on his life. We see it at first in this very rigid locked off shot. Take a look.
If you want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
I got you.
Let me get my shoes.
All right, a lot to unpack here. First of all, he weirdly doesn't seem that phased.
What I've heard from behind the scenes is he wanted to be able to fist pump, he wanted blood spatter, and he wanted to walk sort of nobly off stage, which he ended up doing.
He's undeniably cool. He's not running for cover or holding up a baby like Martin Sheen in Dead Zone, okay? Is he Omar from The Wire now? He's just in the game and people are shooting, he's just walking very slowly. I don't know if I buy entirely into that reaction that he had, but tell me how you think it went over with the audience.
I think the audience absolutely loved it. I think Sir Lawrence has a sort of taste for the supernatural, and he's been lobbying for a long time for the Trump character to be some sort of specially endowed superhero or god. And I think the audience just went to town on it. They loved it. It was high drama.
All right, well, now let's talk about the shooter character. First of all, as far as it goes for a loner weirdo type, I mean, straight out of Central Casting. I heard they found this guy in an off-Broadway show about the life and times of DJ Qualls, the actor. Your thoughts on him and his look?
Well, it's perfect. The friendless loner, person who liked video games, person that ate only junk food, who didn't speak up in class. It's exactly like, you know, an Oswald character or a Sirhan or an Arthur Bremer, who you'll recall shot George Wallace. Yes, it's perfectly, if maybe unimaginatively cast, lone, deformed weirdo.
I was looking at this actor's credits and a lot of impressive stuff there. He was in the short-lived musical adaptation of the David Spade movie Joe Dirt. My question, story-wise, is he was able to take a ladder and a gun in broad daylight, climb up on a roof with a clear visual to where the Trump character was staying. Nobody stopped him. You think they're hinting that maybe the Secret Service had something to do with this?
I think one of the tropes of this show, one of the through lines that we see in every episode, is the writers sowing doubt in all of our institutions. And the Secret Service is certainly one of them.
Here's a question about the aftermath of this scene. Why do you think producers and writers had everyone who plays pundits in the show's universe insist that the Trump character would pivot to unity? I mean, I don't think anyone who watches the show believed that for a minute.
No, I don't think so. I think that was meant to be just pure comedy.
And what do you think of some of the reactions that the Republican characters had to this incident, essentially blaming the Biden entity for setting this up? This doddering 130-year-old man is all of a sudden capable enough of setting this up. That kind of like was a little implausible as well.
I think they want to feed into all possible conspiracy theories to give him an opportunity for different plot lines.
I mean, make up your mind. Is he a cunning killer capable of pulling this off? Or is he falling asleep while waiting his turn, at bingo at River Springs Assisted Living outside of Williamsburg, Delaware? We're going to roll next into the Republican National Convention sequence, and the Trump character announces his selection of a little-known character of the J.D. Vance, played by Cole Mitchell, as his running mate. Now, this is tough. He's not known. He's not appealing by any human standards. What do you think they're thinking here?
I think they're thinking, let's surprise the audience. Let's get a sort of pig-eyed writer of pornography who hates his own people, causing controversy wherever he goes, somebody who's changed his name 100 times, has criminal records.
The Vance character gives a terrible, shitty, boring speech, leading to people missing the excitement of the Mike Pence character. How does this VP character compare to Pence, who was obviously the choice from season 1?
Well, there's still a slavish devotion, kind of with gay overtones in both of them. So they've continued that plot line. But as far as gravitas and the possibility of somebody having a conscience, they've thrown that out the window. This is pure evil. They just want somebody to be a sort of terrifying specter of Trump point 2.
So the Vance character, in the recent past, he has said bad things about the Trump character. Among other things, he's called him a Hitler figure. You think that's something that'll be brought up down the road by the Trump character in a confrontation? Does it give the writers and producers an out? Or does the Trump character not even know what World War II was?
Well, I think it's important to understand that the Trump character doesn't care about anything anybody ever does or says, and none of it has any meaning. But insofar as being called Hitler, I've seen a script where he says, yes, yes, and you're my Reinhard Heydrich. So he's pleased with the analogy, and he's looking forward to a sort of Reich-like alliance.
Interesting. Now, I understand that the writer set up that Don Jr., who was a major character towards the end of season 1, was an advocate in the selection of Vance. Does that mean that now we're seeing Don Jr. come back and actually have a little bit more mojo? Are we going to see more Don Jr. Going forward?
I think we're going to see a romantic relationship between these two, Vance and Don Jr. I think they share a love of certain kinds of collections, antique children's toys, for one, from the 60s, Barbies and Kens and G.I. Joes. And we're just going to see a lot of pillow talk, a lot of bedroom stuff, and it's going to be a sort of unholy alliance that I believe is going to begin to rankle the Trump character.
So we're going to move on to the circus that was the RNC. This coronation has begun. Trump character is sitting there in a box, literally like a weird Roman emperor. He's watching this parade of wackos come in and shower him with praise. One after the other comes to the stage to honor him. And the audience gets a treat of seeing all these old favorites come up and speak a little bit. But the Trump character is in a booth. He's falling asleep. He's taking praise. It's like a Caligula or a Herod character there. How do you think overall they handled the RNC sequences?
I think they were well done. It was a sort of bacchanal and a kind of circus and a violent hate fest. And that's what they wanted to do, to create a kind of hype and terror of what's to come.
I want to do a shout out to the casting folks who work on the show. But how about the way that they use those extras in the background actors, and the way they were dressed? And they put some real effort into that. You could see it. It really paid off in my mind. Look at some of these characters as we talk about it.
I mean, it's incredible. Starch exploded hillbillies, meth heads, many overweight people dressed as toddlers, giant shorts, huge T-shirts.
Also, Hicks in their Sunday best.
Right. Very few people in ties, lots of people with MAGA hat. I mean, it was just fantastic. People with skiing shoes, people with personal scooters. Just a wonderful pastiche of a certain kind of populist America.
Yeah, and I love the nuance too. Here you have Republican wives clearly out on the prowl. Their husbands are out there hobnobbing. I think we're going to see some definite scenes later with who these women find on the floor and bring home. Just a cornucopia of just excellent work there. They deserve a shout out. So I wanted to mention that.
No, it was well done.
Okay, let's do a quick rundown about some of the speakers they had. They bring out a cameo from Hulk Hogan. Now, Hulk Hogan has made some great cameos in his career. Rocky III jumps out, of course, as maybe the gold standard of cameos for professional wrestlers. What'd you think of his performance here?
What you gonna do when Donald Trump and all the Trumpomaniacs run wild on you, brother?
I thought it was excellent. I know they wanted Jesse Ventura. They wanted Big Chief Strongbow. They wanted some older wrestlers. So, yeah, it was an excellent choice, and Hulk never disappoints.
Now, they also had, and they do this for their digital efforts sometimes, they had a lot of weird people show up and speak that are only going to appear on a digital release. And some of them just very strange. Let's run them down a little bit. Actor Craig T. Nelson show up. I thought that was strange. He has nothing to do really with the Republican Trump universe. I just threw him in there randomly. What'd you think of that?
I thought it was great. I think having Scott Thorson, the Liberace lover, was excellent. And a real surprise was Casey Anthony, child killer, who came out against certain kinds of sort of domestic servitude.
I thought that was great. And she started to bring up the concept of IVF. And then at first I was like, what is she saying? She actually made some salient points, which was so surprising.
I'd look to her to be a cabinet member as well.
Okay. Now, we're going to go to break in just a second, but I gave a shout out to the casting people. I have to give another shout out right here to the incredibly talented special effects department that work on the show because of what they did to the head of the character of Matt Gaetz. I mean, that was amazing. Here, we're showing it right now. You have to take your hat off to them, Tom.
That's absolutely true. They got the same makeup artist who did Rocky Dennis in Mask. It's a fantastic transformation. It reminds one of Jocelyn Wildenstein, the famous plastic surgery gallerist owner, his wife.
They put a lot of work into this Gaetz character, and now with this huge appearance at the RNC, I think we're going to see a few shows where he's a major player.
I think so too. I think his strange look, his insane views, his criminal background.
He's belligerent too. He's he's constantly trying to confront people.
He's feisty.
Yeah, I'm hoping for big things for him. First I had written him off. He's coming back strong, so look out for that. Now, so much in this episode. Like I said, last thing we're going to talk about before we go to break, this cliffhanger to end all cliffhangers. At the end of part 1, Biden entity, like Obi-Wan Kenobi at the end of Star Wars, where he's played by Alec Guinness, he says, "If you strike me down now, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine," and drops out of the race, anointing a new nemesis for the Trump character, a black woman, to haunt the Trump character as Kamala Harris. What was your reaction? Were you surprised as everybody else? Were you tipped off? Did you know?
I was tipped off. I knew, but I loved it. I had to keep it under my hat for several weeks. I thought it was a brilliant piece of writing and hurled us, like any perfect screenplay plot point, into a whole nother series of actions.
All right, so much in this episode, and we're only scratching the surface. Part 2 of our podcast today will cover the rest. So when we come back, we're going to answer your questions. That's right, our listener email section, aka Talking Trump Talk Back segment when we return. This is Talking Trump, the American Emperor After Show. Stick around, we'll be right back. Hello, Talking Trump, the American Emperor After Show listeners. Thanks so much for listening and subscribing. We'll get right back with more show in just a minute. But before we do, just wanted to remind some of you that right here on the show at this very moment is an excellent place for a sponsor to run an ad. Just reach out to us on Instagram at American Emperor After Show or by email at AmericanEmperorPod@gmail.com and get your message or product out and associated with this amazing podcast. Hopefully there'll be some space left for you, BetterHelp or ZipRecruiter, because the high-powered sponsors are already claiming their territory. Like this guy.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Gary Walsh from Gary Walsh Sells Things his family owns. It's where you can get amazing deals on things because the people that own this stuff don't know I'm selling them. Let's get started. First, a margarita blender. Look at this beautiful margarita blender. Could you imagine putting a little stuff, tequila in this, a little ice, boom, you'll be sipping Margot Robbie's like it's your job, okay? That's great, you want that, you got that. I'll tell you what, my aunt probably has some salt in the kitchen. If you need some salt, if you buy it now, I'll throw the salt in for free. You get the salt for free. How about this beautiful lady's purse? Look at that. The artist Frida Kahlo, she might have even done this herself. This is absolutely unbelievable. Of course, you don't get what's inside the purse. That would be my aunt's personal information. But the outside, that's pretty fancy. Okay, that's pretty. I'll tell you what. If you buy the purse right now, I'll throw in this thermometer. Is it anal? Is it oil? Put it in your mouth and find out. And that's not all.
Oh, and if you act right now, you have your chance at this beauty. That's right, a white-on-white, probably late 90s, early 2000s, Hyundai Sonata. That's right, with a ballpark of around 185,000 miles, this thing is a steal. If you want it, you gotta act soon. I think my aunt's shift starts at 10. If you don't want it by then, let me know. I could probably shimmy out the catalytic converter later.
Shit. And that's Gary Walsh. Sells things his family doesn't know he's selling. Try the number below. It's my brother Steve's until I get my shit back online. Either way, hit me up on Instagram. Thanks a lot.
All right, welcome back to Talking Trump, the American Emperor After Show. I'm with author, director, and pop culture critic Tom Robb, as always. Time now for the segment where we answer questions from you, the audience. This is Talking Trump, Talk Back. By the way, if you want to send us a question, hit us up on Instagram at American Emperor After Show. Our first question comes from Rebecca Conroy of Madison, Wisconsin, and it says, I love the character of Marjorie Taylor Greene. Can each of you point out your favorite scene involving her? It's a great question.
I think it would be the physical girl fight with Lauren Boebert. Great stage fighting. It involved some nudity, a lot of broken furniture in the Senate chambers.
Some nudity? I mean, I think that the guy who works the pixelation in the edit, he had a long day that day.
Oh, yeah. It was like a double episode of Naked and Afraid by the end of it. It was sort of like, if you've ever seen Family Guy, the chicken fights they had. It went into the hallways. It went across the mall, into the Rayburn building, into the Smithsonian, into a dinosaur exhibit. They had a fight. They had a fight choreographer for that show and an intimacy director. Exactly. Because for a while there, it turns into a love scene, and then it's vicious
working
fighting
in conjunction.
But it took us all throughout Washington monuments and the Mint and the Treasury building and the Daughters of the American Revolution.
It was a love letter to Washington, D.C., ultimately.
Truly. Ending up in the Jefferson Memorial and in the Reflecting Pond, one of the best stage fights I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's a great choice. Mine is the way that she talks about her worship of the Lord in conjunction with the Trump character. I find it touching at times. She really believes that he's Christ-like, and some of us have gone through life and got to dark places, and they've looked to religion. And I find inspiration in how eloquently she speaks about our Savior Jesus Christ in terms of how he's like the Trump character. Here's a little clip of that. Even the hardest hearts are going to get a little bit teary when you hear the passion in her voice.
The fake news media want to constantly talk about, oh, President Trump is a convicted felon. Well, you want to know something? The man that I worship is also a convicted felon. And he was murdered on a Roman cross.
President Trump is joining some of the most incredible people in history being arrested today. Jesus was arrested and murdered by the Roman government.
We don't have guns in the UK, that is true, but we don't have mass shootings either. Children aren't scared to go to school.
You have mass stabbings, lady.
See, I thought that was nice. Sometimes there's a little side of me that's a little bit of a softie.
Very moving.
Yeah. All right. So let's do our next question. It comes from Kyle Remington of Concord, New Hampshire. And it says, now that the Biden entity has been replaced, the internet's full of rumors of who might be replaced next. One name that's popping up is Melania. Who do you think in the cast or as a cameo might replace Melania? What do you think?
I'm not sure about this. They've kept it very secret. A lot of people have talked about the actress who played Precious. A lot of people have talked about Aubrey Plaza, who can do an excellent Eastern European accent. And since it's clear...
Good at everything.
Yes, and Trump calls from Eastern European websites to find partners. So that might work very well there.
Great answer. Great answer. My take on this one, Kyle, is that the Trump character has a long history of volatile and weird relationships with women. If it's not a public feud, it's it's celebrating a woman who's done some kind of shady stuff, like the Ghislaine Maxwell character. It's anyone's guess, but I wouldn't be surprised if they take a figure that Trump's had a feud with and bring that person into the mix. So maybe like a Rosie O'Donnell type or a Whoopi Goldberg, because they're constantly going back and forth. And I see a very, very disturbing yet passionate hate sex scene if they go in that direction.
I think that's a wonderful call.
All right, well, stick with us, people. When we come back, we're going to close the show out with some predictions of what to look for next week. More Talking Trump, the American Emperor after show when we return. All right, welcome back, everybody. This is Talking Trump, the American Emperor after show. Right now, before we close out the show, a couple of quick predictions for coming weeks. My prediction is that, and this is going to be weird, as the mystery orbits the Trump would-be assassin, I think we learn in a flashback that while the Secret Service did not technically set Trump up that day, that Trump was actually buddies with the would-be assassin prior to the day that the attempt was made on his life. I think we'll learn that the Secret Service knew the assassin because their job is to be around him and meet all the people he hangs with. I think we'll find out that the would-be assassin confessed to Trump that he actually had a huge crush on a girl in his school, Melissa Landry, who's very popular and the prettiest girl in the school. I think that once he admitted this to the Trump character went out of his way to not only hit on Melissa Landry, but went and asked her out himself. I think it was a huge betrayal, and I think that the would-be assassin got so mad that he was beside himself, and that's what motivated him to make the attempt. And on top of all of that, I think you'll learn that while the Secret Service did not by any means endorse the attempt, they thought it was really fucked up that Trump went after Melissa like that after he knew that, the would-be guy had feelings for her.
I think that's an excellent prediction, and I would love to see that.
I think they saw the kid with the ladder and the gun. They're like, oh, hey, man, what's going on? Thanks for letting us hang out the other day and play Roblox with you. totally fucked up what Trump did. I didn't think that they thought he would do something so dramatic, but they definitely thought it was fucked up. That the Trump character.
Wonderful surprise. I'm going to say that we're going to have a plot line with the Supreme Court where they've made it so easy for the Trump character to commit heinous crimes that he loses the thrill of it and starts just to sort of weird people out doing things that are actually decent.
Wow.
This is the court and his fans who thrive on him doing evil deeds, and throws us into a whole new world of not knowing what to think.
Almost like a dual, dark side, light side. He becomes like a force for good, but secretly. That's so interesting. I like that idea. All right, folks. Well, that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. We'll be here next week with part 2 of of Talking Trump, the American Emperor After Show. For myself and for Tom Robb, a big thank you for listening. Please check us out on Apple Pods, on Spotify, on YouTube, and keep coming back.